Welcome to HubSpot, the podcast for busy marketers looking to get more leads and sales from HubSpot. Discover the latest from the world of content marketing and social media. Here are your hosts from the Kingdom, Zaahn Johnson and Adam Steinhardt.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 50, and we promised you a big one, and I think you're not going to be disappointed. Welcome, Adam.
Welcome, Zaahn. Yeah, the big reveal.
Big reveal.
We actually have two big reveals going on here. So we've delayed one of the big reveals because a better big reveal has come up.
I know. We're joined today by a very special guest, friend of the show, friend of ours, and we love catching up with this guy when we travel. George B. Thomas, welcome to Australia.
Yeah.
And the Hub and Spoke podcast.
And if I was only there in person, that would be amazing.
I know.
But I love technology. I love you guys. I do love the show. I'm glad that the show is like rolling back out. This is awesome.
I know.
Yeah,
Awesome sauce. It's all good.
Now, they're kind words coming from a person who's put together 172 episodes of the HubCast, dating back to July 31st, 2014, yourself and Marcus Sheridan, of course. Now, George, super keen to ask you a few questions about that. But before we do, I've got to say that podcast, the HubCast, which we listened to pretty much from episode number 1, was a legitimate inspiration for us.
It was.
And we're really appreciative of the efforts of yourself and Marcus. So as Marcus always says, what say you, George?
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm going to let a little bit of the cat out the bag. It has been an amazing journey. From going from that day when Marcus said, hey, I think we should start a podcast, and me hating my voice and me not really understanding what podcasting was, not knowing how to create a podcast, but being able to go through this learning journey of, finding Cliff Ravenscraft, podcasting 101, and actually being able to just digest that and put it in place and get things on iTunes and then have people listen.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, they're going to hear me and I don't know. And here's what's fun is there have been parts in this journey where we finally got it going. We finally started rolling. I ended up going to an inbound. People said, hey, you sound like a radio DJ. I thought, what? Are they smoking? Because I hated my voice, right? But all of a sudden there was this thing, so one of the lessons I learned, because this is really lessons that I've learned through doing this journey. One of the lessons I learned is sometimes what you think is your biggest weakness is actually your biggest strength. And you have to get out of your own head and just kind of go for it. So I'll stop there and we can continue down.
I think one of the great challenges of podcasting, and this is, leads to my next question, is that when you first start, you are starting from zero and you never really know if you do have listeners who are absorbing because you never really get to see them. And so tell us, how was it for you guys? I mean, you mentioned you must have only missed a couple of episodes over that entire time. So the consistency was remarkable. So what were some of the things you discovered along the way, especially in those early days when you weren't even sure if anyone was listening?
Yeah. So the fun part is, and you're right, I think we maybe missed 3, 4 at the most episodes ever in the almost 4 years that I was doing the HubCast. And there's a couple of things. One, when we first started out, we had zero expectation, right? We knew that we wanted to do this thing. We knew that there was no podcast at that point in time that was specific to HubSpot users. And we knew that HubSpot and inbound marketing was something that I loved and that, added value to companies that we would be working with. And so Marcus was like, let's do this. So we had zero expectations. The first episode that we put out on social. And we went into our Libsyn account and we had I think it was 50 downloads.
Yeah, great.
And some people were like, oh, that's not very many. But I was like, holy crap, people are listening, right? Exactly. And that was the fuel that I needed and that Marcus needed to be like, hey, there's something to this. And we're not sure where this is going to go, but it felt right. We did that first episode. And when we closed out the episode, Marcus, I remember it like it was yesterday. He goes, that felt really good. And that was really easy. And I'm like, yeah, this is something. And so we just continued on. And our main goals were, let's just add as much value as possible. Let's be ourselves. Like, and this is another key thing that I learned from the HubCast, was being authentic goes a really, really, really long way. Like, people love authenticity. And so I just realized that I need to be a lovable dork, because that's who I am. And if I'm that authentic and can be a lovable dork and say dumb things on a podcast and add value at the same time, well, then that's a good thing. That's a good show.
Yeah, we feel that that's a similar sort of thing. And I guess advice, I mean, we've done 50 episodes and we're just about to get 100 listeners, which is super exciting and quite amazing. But you've got to look forward to that time slot in the diary, I think. So in the calendar where the podcast is on, because, it takes effort, but I know that Zaahn and I always have a lot of fun doing it. And as a result, it becomes an easy thing. And I think that probably makes it easy to be authentic too. Would you agree?
Oh, I would totally agree. And, it's funny you talk about it being in your diary, which I'm associating to calendar. Just saying, that's a little fun word thing there. Is that for me, it also created like weekly consistency. Like, I knew when we were going to record. I knew when I needed to edit. I knew when I needed to post. And so, like, I could almost plan my week out around the HubCast and what I needed to go over to Twitter and find tweets of the week. I needed to go over to the community so I could get an idea. You know what I mean? And so it really was a staple of, man, this is like, and I'll just say it was my baby, right? And it was just a piece of who I was as George B. Thomas on the internets.
Awesome. Great wrap up of podcasting. Let's move on. So what have you been up to since the sales line, and tell us a little bit about what you guys are up to now.
Yeah, so I'm sure most people listening to this probably have heard that the Sales Line and Impact merged together, which it was an amazing experience. It was fun. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about bigger agencies. I learned a lot about what happens when you maneuver four folks who are used to kind of just being gritty and, getting in the trenches and doing what they do at the sales line into that. I really learned a lot about myself as well. But one thing I'll say is that the people at Impact are awesome. Like, they're incredible people. And because I know where we're going with the rest of the story, I just want everybody to know, like, there was nothing that I hated. There was really nothing that was frustrating. But for me, there was something that just didn't feel right. And I really think that part of what we'll talk about today on this episode is what I'll just call knowing thyself. Right.
Yeah.
And when you get into a situation and you start to feel certain things, what are you as an employee? What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to maneuver? What are your options? And so, to make a long story short, and so that we can flip back into some of the details, I'm moving quite quickly from the sales line to Impact, and from Impact now to another agency that is Impulse Creative.
Wow! Oh, wow, big move. So exciting times, and I suppose change is good. So, but I guess the first thought is that a degree of sadness as a listener to the HubCast, and because am I right in saying that your long-term partnership from a professional point of view with Marcus is now officially coming to an end? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's definitely fair to say. And here's the thing, what's going to make absolute sense right now, why we started out with the HubCast and what we were talking about, is that this is kind of the beginning of the end, or just the end, however you want to put it, where moving forward, I will not be doing the HubCast. Now, the HubCast will continue to be a show. It'll continue to add value, and my co-host Karina has been amazing since the merger, and I'm super interested to see what they'll do moving forward. But my journey, I exit at bus stop 172. Like, wow. That's the end for me, and it is kind of it's kind of a bittersweet thing. And I know that's going to sound really weird, but the bitter part of it is that, like I said earlier, it has been my baby. It has been my just direct line to adding value to a community that grew quite large. I mean, we would get 5,000 to 6,000 downloads a month of that show, and we went through stages of that show where we didn't have sponsors, to then we had sponsors, to like there was a year that we sold over 6 figures worth of income just off of selling our own workshops and speaking gigs and things like that. So to say goodbye to that,
Yeah.
that's the bitter part, right? But the sweet part is knowing that there's something new that's going to start. And what's even kind of more gratifying than that is to realize, to have the strength to say, I've got to walk away.
Yeah.
There's another chance.
Yeah,
do you
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, do you think that you'll miss the actual craft of podcasting, or is that something that you look to do in your new role? Set up another one, or?
Yeah. So let me actually answer that question and then spin back real quick to the other question that Adam asked me, and I so eloquently kind of skated around. What I will say is, there's a new podcast coming.
Yay,
and
right.
So at Impulse Creative, we have already started to think about and figure out a schedule for a show that we are going to call Wayfinding Growth. And what Wayfinding Growth is going to be about is sales, marketing, service, and really just business growth in general. And you know how inbound is kind of transitioning themselves just to be inbound and not inbound marketing and not just inbound sales. And so we're kind of looking at that, but more than that, we're looking at all of these businesses that I've helped, that Remington has helped, that other companies have helped. Like, there's just some other things that could be talked about, from accounting to just all sorts of stuff. Right. And so the idea of being able to kind of go a little bit broader and talk about some more subjects really excites me. And what's nice about this is we don't want to be the same old. So we're going to be an interview podcast, but we're going to do an interview, and then the next episode is actually going to be Remington and myself breaking down that episode and pulling out all of the executable things that people should be doing for their business right now, that day. Because what I've found through going through this HubSpot Academy journey is there are a lot of people that get into this method of educate, instead of educate, execute. Educate, execute. And that's really what it should be about. And so that's why we're basing our podcast around that. Now, Adam, I want to jump back to your question.
Yeah, but
you're like, well, you said, well, does that mean you and Marcus are like parting ways? Here's the thing. Marcus and I will always be friends. We're always going to be mates, buddies. We'll hang out. We'll have fires. We'll be on ships and fish together. But this was another scary part of the transition, because not only letting the HubCast go, but there was this kind of mental.
It was like a Batman. You guys have been Batman and Robin for a long time, really, in the industry.
Yeah, exactly. And there was this mental struggle of, wow, am I about to step out of the shadow that is Marcus Sheridan and kind of do my own thing in this other area while he's doing his thing? And to be honest, like that's pseudo scary right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about podcasting is that it does take you on a journey of life. I mean, we've been on your journey for the last 4 years, and I started listening from episode 1. And I think perhaps one of the great highlights I've experienced in the HubSpot world, and obviously it's a very friendly world, is that that moment when you got to speak at Inbound in 2016, I think it was. It was a huge moment. Am I right in saying in 2015 they rejected you, and then 2016 was the year? Or was it 2014, 2015. I can't remember exactly.
No, you were right. You have been paying attention, Adam.
Yeah. So, but I was in that room, and I knew, and a lot, and that room was sold out.
Yeah, it was great.
Overflowing. Like, you got an overflow session, and I remember how much that meant to you, and how much of a big moment that was to you. And I think that, for so long, that you perhaps considered yourself as an understudy to Marcus, but when I was in that room and watching you deliver what was one of the best performances of the entire inbound conference, it was very clear that you had a personal platform that was as equal and as entertaining as Marcus. So I think, that was a great moment. And look, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I know it was a huge moment for you in your life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And here's the thing. I always try to stay humble, and 2016 was an amazing moment in time. And so was 2017, though. I mean, it's just gotten kind of, each year it's gotten a little bit bigger. And what I have realized is, it's funny, I talk about being like this just goofball, right? Lovable goofball. And while that's a great part of the shtick that I do, what really makes me wake up every morning is the fact of adding value to one person's life, right? So, like, I mean, if I made one video and one person watched it and it helped them make a positive change in their personal life or their business life, I would be absolutely satisfied. Here's the thing.
You are the creator of the world's greatest podcast, Notes. So
You set the bar very high.
Yeah. I love them show notes, I'm going to tell you.
Oh, mate, I can't. Every time I do an episode, I think, oh my God, I cannot possibly type up these notes like George will ever have done. So I'm just not going to worry about it too much. We've got the worst show notes compared to yours.
That's funny. Nah, they're good. They're good. You're doing good.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. When you step on the inbound stage and you have hundreds to thousands of people, and you realize for the next 45 minutes, you cannot even fathom the amount of change that you're going to create. You will never be able to see the ripples that happen in the ocean for that time. Like, Zaahn and Adam, I get goosebumps, like, thinking about those moments. And so, that's why I knew when I kind of set the HubCast to the side, when I made this decision and had to kind of step out of the shadow of, the Marcus and George, the peanut butter and chocolate, the Batman and Robin, I was like, okay, I immediately have to be thinking, how can I continue to add value? And when I go to add that value, how can I add an even larger value than I have historically? And that's really kind of what we went to the whiteboard with, of like, what does this look like?
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting is that I think you nailed it. I mean, when you get the conference guide and you flip through the book and you want to see certain speakers, and I'm absolutely telling the truth, that delivery you gave in that first one meant that in 17, we were flipping through the book saying, right, when's George on? Because we got to go and see him as a priority alongside Marcus, who's always amazing, of course, but it was equally as good and your own authentic style, to your credit.
Well, and I think that just to go back to your educate, execute message, the takeaways for me from listening to you is that I jot down notes and they're immediately executable. Like it's straight out, right, I can go and do that for 5 clients immediately and have an impact. So, and that's the beauty of inbound, I guess. You get to go and see all different levels, all different motivational, inspirational, knowledge-based speakers. But, every time I'd go back and see you speak again, because I know that I'm going to walk out of there with added value that I can then deliver back to my people I need to add value for. So,
yeah. And the thing too, that like one of the things, as you mentioned, that my brain immediately went to is every time I speak at Inbound or pretty much any other event, I almost try to come up with a completely new talk, or at least like 75% new talk, because I don't want to sit there and just say the same thing over and over and over again. Now, there are some times where that makes sense, and you can totally say, hey, this marina audience, they didn't hear what I said to the Janner audience. But when you get into a space that is like content marketing world or Inbound or any other larger like venue like that, you got to bring your A game, and it's got to be like a new material. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Well, and I guess the platform changes so often too these days that you got to keep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like wow.
Yeah, and like last year, I had the joy of going after Michelle Obama. That was terrific.
There you go.
Best speaker in the world, followed by me.
Oh, good stuff. Good times, right?
And I ended up in the biggest room in my life. So I was walking around the stage getting ready. It's like, oh my God, this is going to be great. They're all coming from Michelle Obama. I'm in this massive room. I've got nerves for the first time.
Oh, you did all right. You had some great.
Yeah.
Your question time was good. You had some really good questions at the
I
end.
went too fast and had nothing.
Yeah.
The presentation. Anyway.
So, George, I'd love to talk to you about accreditations. I watch in absolute awe of you and your commitment to the accreditation side of HubSpot.
Was it 19?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, oh my God. I want to break it down and go, how do you find the time to do it? Like, are you just super disciplined or you just love doing them? What's the secret?
Yeah. So, wow. So see, this is like going to get real quick. So, the reason that I have 19 certifications is because for the first time in what I would call my adult life, I saw a roadway that I could follow that almost felt like it was built for me, that I could educate myself and then turn around and educate people on. And let me explain. When I was 17, and some people know this story, some people don't, but when I was 17, I was told by one of my teachers that I would never amount to anything. And I completely believed that teacher. And within 6 months, I dropped out of high school. I looked at my parents. I asked them to sign me into the military, and I went and did boot camp, and I did a couple years in the military. And I just kind of lived what I'll call a very normal life, because I believed that I would never amount to anything. And there was a time in my life where I finally said, you know what? Enough is enough. I don't believe that. I'm going to try to be better. And this ended up taking me into like the first time that I really started to educate myself, which led to another thing and led to another thing and led to another thing. And it kept going until in 2012, I stumbled into Inbound, and I stumbled into, for me, what was the most amazing thing in the world, and that was HubSpot Academy. Because HubSpot Academy was creating content that was video based, and I could watch it, and I could listen to it and watch it at the same time, and I got it.
150% speed.
And so
you can watch it fast.
Yeah. Most of them you can do 120, 130 easy.
Yeah.
There's other ones, not to be mentioned, that you can do 150, 160, and it's like they're talking normal. So that is a little, that's a little pro tip. That's a little pro tip. But for me, it was like, okay, I got 1, and then I got 2, and I got 3. And then I think I had like 4 or 5 when the HubCast started. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. Like the audience that I am talking to right now, they need to know all of this.
Yeah.
And they don't have the time to know all of this. I really have to be the funnel for this, for them.
So you're like the
this
clip
is how
notes. You're the clip notes of the accreditations.
And I'll never forget the first Inbound live HubCast we did.
Yeah,
Somebody asked me a question, and they said, hey, what do you think of GDD? And I was like, what do you think about it? Because I didn't know what GDD was, growth-driven design. And here's the thing. I then didn't feel bad after I figured it out that it was like brand new.
Yeah.
And like there was nothing even on the academy. And so, of course, I wouldn't know about it. But at that point, I was like, okay, from this day forward, when a certification comes out, I will have it in X amount of time, because A, if I ever get that question again, I want to be able to answer it. B, it has to be able to go through the HubCast, and people need to be able to have that conversation with me about it, around it. I kind of need to be that person. And so it just led into like one thing led into another, and all of a sudden it was 17, and like I only needed the 2 growth-driven design ones because it was like you needed a snack and a backpack to get through those. And then all of a sudden I got those ones, and then I finalized it up with like I had been a HubSpot accredited trainer, which they then got away with because it was beta, and they're like, oh, we're going to put a pause on that. They now brought out the HubSpot certified trainer. That was my last one. And so it's like this thing, I posted out this graphic and it's like, hey, I reached the mountaintop, which is not really the mountaintop, because I know HubSpot will come out with more.
Yeah.
But 19 felt good enough to say something about.
Yeah.
And, now I'm just waiting for, maybe the conversion rate optimization certification, maybe the inbound video certification. Like as soon as those come out, I'll get them. So there may be a day where I'm talking to somebody and I have 21, 22, 25, but
Wow.
Zaahn, I want to go back to your question. And here's the thing. It's not magic.
Yeah.
I just made them important.
Yeah.
And so when I was eating my lunch, I would be watching a HubSpot certification. When my wife would go out with her girlfriends and my kids would be in bed, I'd be watching a HubSpot certification. If I had a day that I had a half a day that was blocked off and there was nothing that I had to do and there was no client work and it was like one of those rare moments, then 3, 4, 6 hours, I'd be watching HubSpot certifications and taking it just was, this is important.
Yeah.
And so my spare time, this is what it's going to be. And which means people would ask me about like Netflix shows. I'd be like, I don't know.
Watch them. Yeah. So question. So we obviously are extraordinarily intense to our customers about the need to invest education time. And HubSpot is a big platform now. It needs substantial training. It's challenging businesses from a change management point of view. It needs big buy-in. So, one of the frustrations we have is there are fantastic certifications with great video available for our customers, but very few of them actually do it. Can you give us a bit of an idea of the contrast between what you now know because of them compared to what you wouldn't know if you didn't do them?
Oh my gosh.
That's
all of inbound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, seriously, all of inbound. Like if I didn't take those certifications, I'd be a janitor somewhere.
So
I'm not even joking.
It's effectively a university degree.
Oh, it is. I would say it's even more than that because here's the thing. If I didn't take those certifications when I was back at Wild Boy, then I would have been little to no value to Marcus at the sales line. But he saw a guy who had 4 or 5 certifications, knew a little bit about inbound, knew some design development, some video editing. Hey, come along for the ride. And as we started to go do the HubCast and I started to get certification, we all saw what started to happen. People were like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? What is this guy doing? Like, when's he going to stop? Is he going to stop? He wants to speak it inbound, but why should he speak it out inbound? Oh my gosh, he got another 2 certifications on a Saturday morning. What is going on? Right. And so it was this way to create this kind of perfect storm where all of a sudden this happened where I got an email and it's like, hey, we've got this event and we'd like you to come keynote it.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. So I guess, the thing is, and I get on a bit of a rant about this, is that the world needs to have a better infrastructure for training salespeople. I mean, sales is at the core of everything we do. And I know certainly in the Australian education system, there's no sales degree, and there should be. There should be college degrees that are training people in sales because we all need salespeople and we all need to be salespeople. So full credit to HubSpot because they have really created a modern day digital based cutting edge college degree equivalent with all those accreditations and subjects that are there.
Yeah. And here's the thing. They're free.
They're free. Yeah.
That's
like,
isn't it? Yeah.
Like if you're sitting on your couch eating potato chips and unemployed, they're free. Yeah. Like get 2, 3, 4 of them and an agency will hire you and you will make a paycheck and you will be able to buy better potato chips. I'm just saying.
I agree. And, it does also come, slightly digressing, it does come to an issue which I think is a major problem for what are almost 4,000 HubSpot partners around the globe, is that there is a skill shortage. We need people to do this stuff and they're not ready for it in many cases. So how do the big guys get around that? I mean, I say big because we're only a platinum partner here in Australia, but what do the diamond guys do to get their talent? It must be difficult.
Well, there's so much that could be said right there, good and bad. Depends on the agency, right? Like I've heard horror stories about kind of like Viking mentality going into like smaller agencies and pillaging people.
Yeah.
But those agencies, well, frankly, they just suck. So it is what it is. Now, the other part of it is you just get interns and, you know, you start to train them. And if they end up being good, you build a model that actually like fosters lifetime learning. That's really where the magic is. Like one of the things that I at Wild Boy said to the small team that we had, and at the Sales Line said to the even smaller team that we had, and to Impact and Impulse that I will always say is that we should leave a percentage of time in the day. Like we always talk about billable hours.
Yep.
Some people are going to hate me for this. Some people are going to love me for this. We always talk about billable hours and that we need to have a certain amount of billable hours to be profitable. Absolutely. Totally agree. You also have to have learnable hours, which is you're telling your employees you have these 5, these 8, these 10 hours a week that we just want you to be learning, right? So not everybody's going to watch them when their wife is away and their kids are in bed. But if you give them that hour a day or 2 hours a day, and that's part of their job and you're fostering that learning, then it ends up being a reward for the agency, even though it feels like it's a kind of potential reward for the employee. Here's another thing that I just thought of, Adam, that I think was huge in all of this.
Yeah.
Is that at the Sales Line, I was in a place where the more I learned, the more my personal brand was able to be built. And I was in a company that wasn't afraid of the personal brand being built. And so if these larger agencies want to keep their talent, if they want to grow that talent, then they have to be able to be like okay with saying, look, we're going to do everything we can to make Jimmy successful as a personal brand, because when that personal brand grows, our company brand will grow. And if we got Jimmy, Timmy, Bobby, Susie, and they're all growing, now all of a sudden, man, we've got some special sauce over here.
Yeah. Well, and I think the key to that is that there's no rule book that gets sent out when the latest Facebook algorithm change comes out, or the Google change, or HubSpot, or whatever it might be from the big corporate giants. And so a lot of this stuff that we preach is because we've practiced it on our own. We're like the lab rats. Our own brands are our lab rats in some cases. You know, we test on our Twitter, we test on our own Facebook pages. And so that's a really important part, to allow that freedom, because that's how you learn the mistakes on your own dime before you go and end up consulting to other businesses where it really matters. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And when I hear you talk about that, I think about how you can't be afraid to fail, because it's through that failure that you actually learn what works, which, tying back into this big mammoth decision that I have chosen to do, is part of it, I felt like I was standing on a cliff, and I knew, depending on if my squirrel suit worked or not, this could be an epic fail, but I was willing to go ahead and still jump.
We're a little we're blushing here. We're not quite sure if that's an actual difference in culture. The squirrel suit down here means something a little bit different.
So if you go look at GoPro videos, and those guys are jumping off cliffs and they've got like the little wing suits.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So yeah. I was thinking sort of like the mankinis that people wear at the beach.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
So bleep that last section out. But
for you.
Yeah. So I'll know when I'm there in person, I will not wear a squirrel suit. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Call it a suit with wings.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. I knew that, like, hey, I'm going to jump and we'll see what happens. And so many companies, so many agencies, so many businesses, they look at that cliff and they're like, you know what? It's safe up here. So let's just hang out here. You know, we got a nice view. And I just was like, man, yeah, it might be a nice view, but I got to jump.
Yeah.
Cool. And I know Zaahn is going to punch me because it's her question turn, but I'm just relate that to the fact that a lot of businesses that we quote to are often scared about taking aboard HubSpot because of the cost. But in this day and age, you would have seen it over the last 5 years, it's almost the cost of not doing it is going out of business. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, totally. If you're not able to, and that's the thing, the problem is we always tie it into software. Yeah. And really the conversation just needs to be like, hey, if you're not willing to report what's working or not working, okay. If you're not willing to educate your customers because they want to be educated, okay. If you're not willing to engage with them, via video or social platforms or an audio podcast, okay, well, let me just go talk to your competitor because they're the ones that are going to be around, and you're not.
Cool. So, George, you've got a couple of agencies under your belt now, obviously the Sales Line and Impact, and moving now on to Impulse. What are some of the things that you've seen with the way agencies work with clients that have worked well? Because this I hear is we have faced it ourselves here at the Kingdom, and it seems to be a recurring theme of billable hours, retainer. We work with you for 3 months, then we let you fly. What are things that you've seen that have worked well, and what hasn't worked well?
Yeah, definitely. So, and it has really been interesting because at the Sales Line, to just be completely transparent and honest here, like we were very much kind of like fly by the seat of our pants because it was a small team. We could say we wanted to do things. We could say we didn't want to do things. We could train people on certain things. We could really it was like, it's just super flexible, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that was good. And there's so many ways that was bad.
Yeah.
Because the words prioritization really never came into the big scheme of things. It was just like, hey, another client, sure, and another HubCast episode, yeah, and we want to do 52 videos in 2 days at our next Rockfest, woo, and like so it's just like that. And then you go from that, which, by the way, again, good things because you're super nimble, like flexible, pivot easy. Oh, you want to go from inbound and talking about HubSpot all the time to talking about video? Sweet. We're there. And it worked. It worked really well. And then you transition from that and you go into, like Impact, where for me, it was almost like stepping onto a different planet, but in a good way, right? Because you've got Scrum and Agile, and all of a sudden there's a thing that are called stand-ups where like these pods of people are meeting for like 15 to 20 minutes, and they're like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what's stopping me from what I got to do. And, here's my points for this. And I'm like, dang, it's like a whole new language. But in a really, really good way because it was structure, and and we did talk a lot about prioritization, and we did talk about like, this is the group that does this, and this is the group that does this because they do it the best.
Yeah.
And so all of that's good. All of that's good, right?
Yeah.
But only if you're from that planet.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so for like a lot of the Sales Line team, it was like, man, this planet's awesome, and we dig this planet, and we were actually wishing that our planet would have been a little bit like this. And I'm the like lone space guy going, hey, when's the next space bus back to back to my planet? Because it just felt different. But here's out of both of those, though, there were some things that were consistently awesome, right? Number one, great leadership is just great leadership. It doesn't matter if it's a small agency or a big agency. You can take Marcus Sheridan, and he was a great leader for small Sales Line agency. You look at somebody like Bob Ruffalo, Tom DeCipio, Chris Dupree, like that is a top-notch leadership group. I mean, they just do a really good job, and they try to do the best they can with what they have kind of built in the structure that they have to live in. Not as nimble, not as quick and flexible, but still great at what it does, because at both of these examples, there's great leadership. The other part of this is that you have to have great communication, right? And so what I mean through, it's like a small 4-person team, you could have crappy communication, because it's the 4 of you and you're just floating in your own little area, or you can force yourself to like, no, we're going to communicate on these certain projects or things that we're doing. We had really good communication at the sales line, although sometimes spotty because Marcus would like go dark on us, we used to call it, because he'd be like speaking in India or Belgium or something like that. So we're awake, he's asleep. It just, it was what it was. But you look at Impact, and it's just great communication because they have built this tiered structure that, leadership gets it through to this person, who gets it through to this pod leader, who gets it through to this pod.
And
all of a sudden it's work.
These are a lot of the challenges that our customers face in dealing with growth. And it's ironically how the HubSpot platform and suite of tools assist that process enormously, because, we see a lot of businesses that are struggling either with growth they've had and they've put on a lot of people and they're in a space which is not as efficient as it once was, and they're coming to terms with that, as well as businesses that are struggling to make that first step. So it's a global problem. Of course, it's a huge problem. But so how did you come out the other end of all that?
Yeah. So, and here's the thing, I'm going to do a video series moving forward at the beginning of this month called Transitions, because the only way that I know how to explain how I, got through to the end of all this is that there are some things that, as I thought in my brain for a long time, and as I kind of like prayed about, man, where am I supposed to be? Like, why doesn't this feel right? What's going to feel right? Like, what am I missing? I started getting these kind of concepts in my head of like, okay, I'm a very goal-oriented dude. Like, I have now goals, 2020 goals, and 2023 goals that are written on a board that I look at every single day. And so these goals are driving my decisions. But what if, like, where I'm at in my life right now doesn't allow those goals? Like, now those goals will take a decade.
Yeah. So,
and at my age, I don't have a decade to go. Like I do. Like I hope I live longer than right. But it's like I don't have that time. Like I have to do this now.
So it's like I mean, we're the same age, so I can make this joke. It is a midlife crisis in many ways, isn't it? It's a scenario. Well, I don't know if crisis is the right word, but I know that a crossroad. Yeah, it's a crossroad.
Yeah. It's like that you have a limited amount of time to put that dent in the universe that you've decided that you're going to put, right? And so I started thinking about, well, the goals and how do those drive me? And then I started thinking about, like, when you plant a plant in soil and it grows in that soil, AKA the sales line, what happens when you uproot that plant and you plant it in something that's maybe a little bit more clay-based or sand-based? Well, that plant doesn't grow right because it's not getting the right water, it's not getting the right shade, it's not getting the right sun. And so I started thinking about that. And then I started thinking about like ownership mentality and again, all of these are like mental, psychological things that are going on in my brain of like being able to see the ceiling and also being able to see the net. And at the sales line, it was very much like flying through the sky and not seeing either of those. And so I'm going to kind of go through probably 5 to 7 different kind of mini videos, probably Facebook Lives, where I kind of talk about this thing and talk about how I worked through it and my thoughts that got me to a certain point where I finally had to say, look, I've got to make this leap of faith. I've got to jump. This looks like the place that I want to land. And let me see if that's even possible. And if that starts to feel right, then I'm just going to make that decision. So that's really the process.
So I reckon that, one of the things we see is the great challenge of the cloud and the internet revolution sweeping through people in their 40s, where the challenge of technology taking over jobs or changing jobs so dramatically when there's still plenty of years left in the workforce is quite traumatic. And so perhaps as what I'd love to see in Transitions, the video, is a guy like yourself who started from a negligible IT/tech background and then suddenly has obviously become, over the last 5 years, fully accredited. So perhaps some inspiration for the people that we see that are, and we ourselves spend a lot of time just trying to keep up. Some inspiration for those that are in their 40s trying to transition into this difficult world of tech, which is moving so quickly.
It's scary.
Yeah, it is. But here's the thing: so much of this battle is in ourselves. Right. Like allowing ourselves to realize we are that good. or that we do deserve that, or that we can achieve, things that might seem impossible to us now. Because here's the thing: if in 2012, when I heard Gary Vaynerchuk on the stage of Inbound, somebody showed me that I would have to get 19 certifications to be where I am, I'd be like, oh man, where's the exit door?
Yeah.
Because it just would be too much, right? And here's the thing. One of the things I love to do so much is I get a chance to talk to like college students every now and then.
Yep.
And the way that I talk to them as I'm like, look, when you wake up in the morning and you got to go out to your kitchen and you got to cook breakfast, you really don't think about like going out to your kitchen, getting the eggs out, getting the spatula out, getting the milk out, getting the cheese out. You just think, I got to take these 17 steps out to the kitchen and then I'm going to make breakfast.
Yep.
That's all you think about.
Yep.
And so for me, over the last, XYZ years, it's just been like, what's the next step?
Yep. Stage.
That's as far as I'm thinking. That's
classic eating an elephant thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
One mouthful at a time.
yeah. Well, this has been awesome, George. I do have one last question, please, and it's slightly indulgent, but I'm sure that you will afford us that. We do round out our podcast with a section called #GirlBoss, and it's what I would like to change about HubSpot. So I'm going to flip it to you and go #GeorgeBoss.
Oh, snap.
What would you do if you could direct line to HubSpot? What's your thing you'd change?
All things.
Well,
Here's the platform.
There's so much. I mean, and that I hate to say that, like it's not a bad thing because I love everything that's there, but there are so many things that I'm like, well, I wish, because I have 172 wish list items that we've talked about over the journey of the HubCast, but probably right now, I would say I wish that HubSpot would focus a little bit more on giving us some type of video platform. Yeah. I understand that we can integrate with Vidyard and Brightcove and Wistia and all of those, but something that was a little bit more native inside the tool would be super, super awesome. There is something that's already in the tool that I'm really confused about why it's being treated like what I would call maybe the redheaded stepchild. And especially with the new navigation. The new navigation that came out just recently is super awesome, by the way. So let's give them props on that.
That is cool.
But the fact that the product library is still like hidden away in settings, I just don't get that. So I would bring that up out of settings. I would bring it to where people like knew more about it, would use it more.
The library is very good. I mean, that's part of our sales pitch. I mean, they're effectively, whenever a classic is, how do I run a webinar? And so that's where you go, the library, and download the 5 or 6, 10 ebooks that are there on how to do that. So it does. I agree. That's a really underrated part of the platform.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more. And this is I sort of wish it was like this, but don't wish it was like this. Just because I know what's kind of coming next and things that we're talking about. I wish that messages, AKA what's going to be conversations, could just be drift.
I agree. Yeah.
Because drift is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
They're killing it. David Cancel and their team over there, David Gerhardt, like they're amazing. And, here's the thing. What I would say is it wouldn't be the first time that HubSpot acquired something that David worked on, but
yeah, totally.
But I don't see that happening. But, because
I
just think AI and chatbots are super dope. Like I was actually doing some research and kind of working on a talk that I'm giving later this year. Can't really say where, but it may be in a city that's on the East Coast somewhere.
And cloud chowder.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll be released in like the next week or two. But with that said, like I'm doing some research so I can talk about like video inside of your chatbot and how effective that can be versus just text displaying in a chatbot. So, I mean, there's just so many amazing things that you can do. I would add that to HubSpot. I wish that would be a little bit more baked out.
Cool. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, where the tool is the platform's sensational at many, many things and market leading in certainly the experience of integrating things like blog, website, email, etc. But then there's areas where others do it better. And obviously the new Shopify integration is super exciting because they couldn't have done e-commerce better than Shopify. And I think Drift and the messaging area is one of those spaces because, you know, a lot of our customers, we say, oh, we've got messaging. It's like, yeah, but I've already got it and it's better. So that might be a space of specialization integration rather than trying to do it themselves, I reckon.
Yeah, I've got one more just to throw a coal in the fire before we get out of here. Can I have my keywords tool back? Boom.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Yeah. RIP, man.
Yeah.
I miss that bad boy.
I agree. And, you know, the thing is that now we're having to go and sell Ahrefs or SEMrush as an add-on because people still want that. So, that wasn't a great idea. I mean, I get the cluster thing. That's cool, but let's have both. What's wrong with both?
It's like being a boat without an anchor, I find. Yeah. The keyword tool was easy to reference and
wasn't doing any damage.
No.
Yeah, and here's what's crazy to me is I say we, but it's not we. I wish I had some of we money, but HubSpot, like they made this decision right around the time that in your Google console, you can now start to see keywords again. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Turn it back on. It's still there. I'm sure the code's not gone anywhere. Just turn that baby back on, HubSpot.
Well, it flips everything that you say when you're pitching HubSpot about, you know, it's all in one spot. It's all in one spot. Now the keyword tool's not there. So like you say, you've got to flip out and go to Ahrefs or the Google console.
And the thing is that it also gave purpose. I found that when you're writing a blog or a web page, you use those keywords as a much better way to create boundaries for your own writing.
Well, and as a retainer base.
I knew if I threw that out there, we would just start to go.
I know. We could have done a whole keyword tool.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you so much, George. It has been a real honor for Adam and I. It's we did have a little fangirl moment. We won't share the video of that, but oh my God.
That's funny.
Very cool to talk to you, and we look forward to catching up with you in person in Boston in September. And
on the new podcast.
Yeah, I know.
So when's the first episode of Wayfinding Growth going to be hitting the airwaves?
Yeah, Wayfinding Growth will probably be hitting the airwaves in probably the next week or 2 weeks. I'll definitely be posting it out on socials. If people have questions about it, they of course can hit me up on Twitter's at George B. Thomas.
Cool.
They can even shoot me an email if they want. It's just george@impulsecreative.com. And I'm more than happy to direct them to where the new Wayfinding Growth podcast is going to be. As a matter of fact, they could just go to wayfindinggrowth.com. Don't think it's live right now, but within the next week it will be, and there'll be a show there.
Excellent. Cool. All right, mate. Well, thank you so much. 172 episodes of the HubCast, and certainly plenty of inspiration, knowledge, and education that you delivered. So on behalf of all the listeners, for yourself and Marcus, who've delivered that, we thank you. But also thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us at a time when our little journey of podcasting continues. We appreciate it enormously. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Let me just give you guys one word of advice. Keep doing what you're doing, adding value to the community. Be consistent with it. It will grow. There's a spot there for everybody that wants to do their own little version of the podcast. And one last tip that I learned by doing the HubCast and having to say goodbye at episode 172 is it's always hard to say goodbye, but bye-bye.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Cheers. We'll catch you later.
Thanks.
For all the new shows, check out www.thekingdom.com.au/hub-and-spoke. You have been listening to Adam Steinhardt and Zaahn Johnson of The Kingdom, an inbound marketing agency from Adelaide, South Australia. HubSpot Platinum Partners and the International HubSpot Partner of the Year 2015.